How is it going, everyone? We've got some news to talk about regarding Stellar Blade, particularly updated sales figures of the game coming from Digital Today. Now, this is something that we'll have to run through Google Translate and to get our information, but some interesting information as far as how well the game has done, and obviously it has done very, very well. And beyond that, I do want to talk a story that went around as far as Stellar Blade Studio Shift Up gifting its staff some pretty cool items. I think that's a great way to build goodwill within your staff. I mean, creating great games and them being received well, and then you getting rewards on top of that. I think that's pretty cool, all things considered. I think Shift Up's been doing a great job in terms of just building its goodwill in terms of consumer reception, fan reception. And then also, it seems like within the workers themselves. Now, I based on just giving away gifts, I don't know entirely what the work culture is like and the hours and things of that nature, but nevertheless, we'll talk that at the end of this video. But first of all, Stellar Blade has done incredibly well. Global mobile market data analysis firm Sensor Tower revealed on the 14th that Stellar Blade has achieved the #1 sales position in the hack and slash genre on Steam after its release on the platform. According to the report released by Sensor Tower, Stellar Blade has recorded cumulative global sales of approximately 3.7 million units since its PlayStation release in April of 2024. This ranks it 4th in sales for the hack and slash genre on the platform over the past year. The player composition showed the United States was the highest at 33%, and 57% of all players were hardcore gamers owning 100 or more games. I find that stat rather interesting, and I would imagine that's cumulatively upon their entire lifetime on PlayStation as far as digital games are concerned, which I wouldn't say is that much. Like, if you have an active PlayStation Plus subscription, owning over 100 games or having over 100 games is pretty easy. Just over the course of a couple of years, you'll crack the 100 games number, and maybe that's counting free-to-plays as well. But nevertheless, the performance of the Steam version released on June 12th last year is noted to be even more remarkable. Cumulative sales since the Steam release to date are approximately 2.4 million units, with cumulative revenue exceeding $100 million. Consequently, it ranked first in both cumulative sales and revenue among Steam hack and slash games over the past year. It is explained that despite the relatively high price point of $59.99, it recorded a user rating of 94.2%, significantly surpassing the average paid hack and slash rating of 71%. Well, you know, a lot of games on PC generally are bad ports or just not as good of a game as Stellar Blade, so that's not too surprising. The Steam player composition, Chinese users accounted for the majority at 52%, and I do remember when I was looking at the Steam charts for Stellar Blade, it very much was peaking, much like Black Myth Wukong, around the hours in China, but there's still a significant amount of people that picked up Stellar Blade stateside, and the reason being for that is, while PlayStation's, you know, they're getting more and more popular in China, especially after the release of Black Myth Wukong. I know Black Myth Wukong drove a lot of PlayStation sales. PC is still going to be the predominant market there, and Stellar Blade seeing a delayed release in China didn't affect it as much as far as its user reception versus over here stateside, where, yeah, a lot of people over here stateside did pick up Stellar Blade, but it still came out north of a year later on PC, which is always going to hurt a game as far as how well it's going to do from a concurrent player count standpoint and things of that nature. The analysis is that expansion to the PC platform was highly effective in broadening the new user base in the Chinese market, where PlayStation usage is limited. The PC version release also had a positive impact on existing console metrics. On June 12th, the release date of the PC version, the PlayStation daily active users surged more than 6-fold compared to the previous day, setting a new all-time high record. This is interpreted as a cross-platform synergy resulting from an update that enhanced visual completeness and linked content with Shift Up's representative intellectual property, Goddess of Victory, Nikke, and yeah, we covered that DLC as well. Stellar Blade has been one of the biggest success stories, especially if you look at, you know, around the time of the reveal of Stellar Blade and more so into the development. And bear in mind that I would say that the world was in a very different place when Stellar Blade initially got revealed versus when Stellar Blade ultimately came out. I don't think anybody is going to disagree with me on that, but these kind of quote-unquote Gunnar-esque games were going to be perceived in a certain way around the time of Stellar Blade's announcements, which honestly makes it a little bit more impressive to me that they ended up trucking along with it. Yeah, Shift Up announced Project Eve, that was the original title, in April of 2019. Think about where we were in April of 2019 and 2020, and this was being done by an overseas studio. It's just not like they were creating a game with Western customers in mind, but still, I remember when this game was revealed and then it got more and more attention, you know, there was some pushback. There absolutely was, and by the time of release, I feel like a lot of people did ultimately ascertain, oh, this is actually a good action game under the hood, and I think it behooved them to release a demo because that showcased to a lot of people like, wait a second, this isn't just eye candy, this is a mechanically well done game, and ultimately, that's always what Gunnar Bait is gonna get you. Gunnar Bait might get you a little bit of attention for a game, but ultimately, if a game isn't of quality, it's not gonna do very well. Look at Code Violet. Yeah, Code Violet got a decent bit of attention, but look at what the reception for that game is. Ultimately, and as more and more of these games are coming out that can be deemed as Gunnar Bait, the actual novelty of them is gonna wane more and more. And the reason why Stellar Blade did well is like, okay, you could give it a point for having an attractive character at the helm of a character-driven action game. Like, wow, dude, what a crazy concept that the character-driven action game should have an appealing character from an aesthetic standpoint. I am so blown away by that, and I would say it's an integral element to a game because that character-driven action game is gonna be promoted around the character! Yes, this isn't rocket science, but for some reason, with Stellar Blade, it became such a big discussion point, but beyond that, beyond the promotional aspect of the game, it comes down to the actual game itself, and Stellar Blade was a quality action game, and I think most people are in agreement of that. Do some people say that the game is overrated based on its Gunnar elements? I can understand that take. If you think this game is like a 7 out of 10 game, and you think a lot of people are giving it 9 out of 10s and 10 out of 10s, and it doesn't deserve that, totally fine with that opinion being had, and that's a discussion we can have about any game, not just games that are perceived Gunnar Bait. But it's also a quality game. Like, I really don't believe people would be completing this game and talking so highly about it if it was just bait. It's more than that, and there's a quality game there, and I think the sequel is gonna be even bigger. I really do believe now that it's an established IP, and now that they're probably gonna put an even bigger budget towards Stellar Blade 2, and the potential of that game is sky high, I foresee that game being even bigger, especially if it's on PC right out the gate. We'll see how that turns out, because the PC release of Stellar Blade is really interesting. While Shift Up obviously isn't a Sony-owned studio, PlayStation did do the publishing of Stellar Blade on PC, which I find that rather interesting. It's a different story with a game like Rise of the Ronin, where Sony had an exclusivity deal with that game as well, but when that game a year later ultimately came out on PC, Tecmo Koei handled the publishing of that game. So to me, it feels like PlayStation has more of an investment into the Stellar Blade IP, and just like any other IP that they're invested into, yeah, they'll release it on PC at some point, but I do feel like Stellar Blade is a game that I think Sony hopes to build PlayStation around, and I think they do need a couple new mascots. Like, ultimately, Kratos is great, you know, Nathan Drake is kind of long forgotten at this point, and Last of Us, I don't know when that's coming back, but I feel like you do need a couple new mascots to build the PlayStation IP around, and you've established Astrobot, you can establish Eve. I just think that makes a lot of sense. You want mascots that are a key part of your brand, and I think Eve can be that for a while for PlayStation, but that's just my 2 cents. I do quickly also want to note that Shift Up has gifted all of its staff AirPods Maxes and an Apple Watch for their success in 2025. It gave each of its staff a set of Apple AirPod Maxes and an Apple Watch, and they also gave a bonus of $3,400, a total value of more than $4,000 per employee. Now, depending on what the work culture is like I can't just say based on this bonus that the work culture in Shift Up is amazing, but it sounds like every time I hear about Shift Up, it's something positive. And they've just done an incredible job in terms of building goodwill beyond their employees, because I can't speak mostly on that. But in terms of every time you hear a news story about ShiftUp, it's usually something pretty positive. And who knows, things can go awry pretty quickly in the games industry, as we've seen. But credit to ShiftUp over the course of the last 2 years since the release of Stellar Blade, and even prior to that, they've become one of the more notable studios in all of gaming. And you put Game Science in there as well in terms of just very quickly becoming one of the more prominent studios in all of gaming. Sandfall as well, but you love to see that, given that sometimes some of the bigger publishers leave a lot to be desired. But that's gonna do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Stellar Blade doing incredibly well from a commercial standpoint, and good things over at ShiftUp. That'll do it for me. Your thoughts down below, sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.